world's population. I think we also have to embrace the fact that reducing our climate change emissions has a whole bunch of benefits at home. It has benefits for our air quality. It has benefits for our public health that go beyond the aggregate reductions in carbon. It has benefits for job creation. I mean, one of the things I think has been great about the current governor of New Hampshire and the current governor of Massachusetts and a number of others in the region is that they have come over the last few years to embrace the notion that we can think seriously about energy policy and climate change emissions and help figure out how that means that we can create jobs for local people in communities all over New England. So this is also not about just about sort of global issues. I have served, the third way I think we have to think about the seriousness is in terms of American national security. Whatever the next president chooses to do about scaling down or drawing the war in Iraq to a different kind of conclusion, we will accept that the United States is a global power, that the United States' power extends globally. That's what that means. That the United States' interests are global, and that there are millions of people and dozens of states that make demands on the United States of America who need the help of the United States of America. And that means that the security situation and the people in our security architecture, and in the military and other places, are going to be affected by climate change. I served over the last year as an academic advisor to the National Intelligence Council's process of doing a national intelligence assessment, which is the way in which the whole set of agencies in the United States government who work on military and security intelligence issues come together to do a kind of a public and an internal, partly classified version about what does an issue mean. So some of the famous ones, for example, are whether or not Iran, where Iran is for its nuclear capability, or whether or not Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. As you may know, we, in the climate change assessment, we hoped to emulate the ones that were more accurate than that latter version. But in general, their record is better than that famous example suggests. But one of the things that was so impressive for me was that I went into that process about two and a half years ago, really thinking that there would be a hard sell inside the intelligence community, that these are, this is DC, these are big private sector firms mostly, and their government advisors who are not prone to wild liberal talk about environmental protection. How's that? And actually, it was not a hard sell. There were very serious concerns in the security and military apparatus, very serious concerns among security analysts, that as they look out not very far, 10, 15, and 20 years, about the climate change and trends and migration patterns and where it is that governments that are already unstable and under such political and economic strain, what climate change does to those stresses. And this is a very serious issue. And it actually did span across some party and ideological lines in a way that made me more optimistic. And then, of course, this has been said, the connections to global poverty and opportunity and some justice issues. So what should we be hearing more about? There's a couple more minutes. The crisis, the need, how serious this is, the need for U.S. leadership, and the need for climate action. Now, the good news is that all of the candidates who will be on your southern New Hampshire ballots have something to say about those issues. In contrast to the last several presidential elections, we face a presidential election, and with both candidates from both parties believe we should do something considerably more about climate change than we are doing now. And in my mind, this is a huge step forward in terms of the climate change debate. I think you cannot underestimate the importance of leaders in both parties beginning to come on board with climate change. And it seems to me that Senator McCain has a longer and more distinguished record of years of commitment to this issue. But I will also say that his position has not moved very much in the last few years. I wish it reflected the kind of evidence that Cameron noted, that the evidence coming in from our scientific colleagues is more alarming than we thought, and it seems to me that we need considerably more serious policy than we would have needed even 4 or 6 or 8 years ago. And I think that the representatives from the campaigns are here, but it seems to me that that it is incumbent upon our political leaders to make sure that they keep this issue on the front burner. And it is incumbent upon voters and citizens to make sure that they don't let it disappear into the back. There are lots of policy details. If people want questions about policy details, usually when I say that I'll talk about renewable portfolio standards and cap and trade schemes and emissions reduction levels, people normally understand that as a terrible threat, and they don't take me up on it because it sounds horrendously wonkish. But I'm happy to talk about it if you want. A couple of points to close, and then I'll wrap. After the election, climate change will still be really important. And after the election, there will be many, many really important issues. And I think it's really incumbent upon all of us to make sure that candidates and then winners of elections get to hit them hard. The second thing is that I hope that you'll draw away from Cameron and from the other presentations that pretty big reductions reasonably fast are possible. That this is not happy talk. Right now, for those of you who like to travel in Europe and sit in lovely cafes and such, it turns out that Europeans have a very nice lifestyle at half of the per capita emissions that we produce as Americans. It turns out, for those of you who like to go to California, Californians are monstrously more energy efficient than is the rest of the country on average in terms of their electricity use, because they have policies that produce that, right? Because they have policies that produce that. And so that this is not about, I think it's fair to say that we don't know how we're going to live as a people on 90% less carbon emissions than we live right now. But we don't need to know that now, right? We know that we can live on 30 and 40% fewer emissions and have very nice lives and actually accrue economic benefits at home by having that reduction. In New England, we are especially able to accrue huge benefits from this because most of our energy is generated and comes from outside, which means that when the energy comes in, our money goes flowing out. So we should be thinking much more about how to generate it here with jobs and economic growth. Long-term policies and planning are possible. It turns out we do in fact have policies that are long-term and over decades long, and we can do them for climate change. And we have good examples of this. And the last one I would say is that leadership matters. And when we talk about leadership matters, I won't make our political candidates entirely responsible. We can all be leaders in our organizations and in our communities. UNH has an amazing record, right? We are reducing our CO2 emissions as we speak, which is no small accomplishment given that the state in which we live and the country in which we live has emissions that's going up. So the fact that ours are going down means that we are doing something right? And it means that we have made commitments to do that. And that's true of all levels of government and in all kinds of areas of firms. So the last thing is that in the spirit of all of you and all of us being leaders in our organizations, I'll tell, since I live across the border in Massachusetts, I'll tell one story that invokes a Kennedy. There's a good story that Senator Kennedy tells about when he was first elected to the Senate, and he says that his brother Jack pulled him over and said, you know, Teddy, this is great. You're going to love being in the Senate. He says, and the first day you get there, you're going to think, my God, I cannot believe I am in the United States Senate. You're going to be so impressed. It's just an amazing institution. He says, but after about 6 months, you're going to look around and think, my God, I cannot believe these other guys are in the United States Senate. And that's because you can become your own leader, and so when you're intimidated by a new challenge or organization, then just jump in and master it.
For the presentations. In the interest of time, I'm going to move things right along and get to the campaign representatives who are here, to give each of them who are here and are interested in giving their perspectives on what they've heard and what you've heard to this point, and on what their candidates feel that he or she is currently trying to campaign to be able to do in the future on the issue of the environment, on the issue of changing our climate. What I'll do is I'll start from the top down, and I'll begin with the Obama campaign. I will remind you that Jim O'Brien, who was to represent the John McCain campaign from Granite State Conservation Voters, had an emergency literally just a few hours before this event tonight and was unable to attend. They had every desire to and every intention to. And I just wanted to let all of you know that please don't prejudge because the McCain folks aren't here. It was literally something that came up at the last minute and we couldn't change gears. So let me bring up the presidential campaign